Welcome, everybody. We'll take a second here to get settled in. Oh my God, it's so great to see that again. Nara, you're joining us from the East Coast, and you're still connecting to audio. Let's see here. There's Amy. Amy, you are the number one. Tacey Quinn, no way. Sweet. We got multiple East Coasters with us. There's Mary. Yay. All right. Welcome, everybody. Well, listen, what an honor to get to connect in this way and see this amazing piece of work about an amazing young, as he likes to say. And, um, Mary and I have been friends now for some time. Gosh, when she told me about this project and this idea, I just thought it was the most spectacular thing I could think of in terms of a biopic, and it doesn't disappoint. So, listen, I wanted to quickly throw the mic over here to Tyler. Tyler is our campaign manager for the Wild film, and for those of you who don't know, my name is Mark Titus, and I'm the director of the Wild. And if you joined us right at the beginning of our broadcast, we showed the trailer for the film, which is a love story for wild salmon and an urgent plea for Bristol Bay, Alaska. But what we're here to do tonight is talk about Mary and Nara's film, and about Samuel Johns, and about social justice. So, Tyler, would you give us the ground rules here for how to use this Zoom feature that we're doing?
Absolutely. Yeah, welcome everybody. So we are going to have a live Q&A where you are all able to ask questions and be a part of this. As you can see, you've been muted upon entry, but you will be able to unmute yourselves. You can also use the chat to ask a question if you'd like, or use the raise hand feature in Zoom, and I can unmute you manually. Or if you want to ask a question and can't unmute yourself, I can see all your guys' screens, so you can just wave and I can help you out.
Tyler, my man, thank you, sir. So I'm going to quickly introduce our panelists and our team members here from the film, and then got a couple questions for each of you, and then we'll open it up to the rest of the panel here to ask questions, comment on what you saw tonight, start a discussion. So first, I'd like to start with Rebekka Schlicting. Rebekka is the Assistant Director of Vision Maker Media, whose mission is to empower and engage Native people to share stories. An enrolled member of the Iowa tribe of Kansas and Nebraska, Rebekka earned a master's in professional journalism from the University of Nebraska-Lincoln. She earned her bachelor's degree in journalism from the University of Kansas. Rebekka's awards include 40 Under 40 Award for the National Center for American Indian Enterprise Development, 2018, Robert F. Kennedy Human Rights Award, 2017, Robert F. Kennedy Human Rights Grand Prize, 2017, Outstanding Graduate Student, 2016, Franco's List for Integrity, 2015, first and second place for Best Feature Story in TV Online by NAJA, 2014, Academic Achievement by SES Trio, 2010, and last but not least, Best High School News Story by NAJA, 2008. Our second panelist tonight is Nara Garber, who's the DP, or Director of Photography, for the film. Nara is a Brooklyn-based filmmaker with an abiding belief in the power of moving images to increase understanding and enrichment experience. Specializing in intimate verite storytelling, Nara's award-winning debut feature, Flat Daddy, enjoyed a 2-year run in the UK on PBS America. Her cinematography credits include the HBO documentary Making the Crooked Straight and POV pick and Peabody Award winner Best Kept Secret. Nara is currently directing a documentary about the Anguillan musician Banky Banks, but as has been experienced by many of us, filming was interrupted in March just after the 30th anniversary of his music festival, Moonsplash, by the unexpected hit of coronavirus. And she, like the rest of us, is retooling and structuring the film to accommodate the impact of the pandemic. And lastly, and certainly not least, my friend Mary Katzke is currently a 2018 Rasmussen Fellow in Media Arts and has been writing and directing films since she graduated from the Radio Television Film School at the University of Texas, Austin. After a summer trip to Alaska, this sounds familiar, she began producing documentaries and formed Affinity Films, Inc., a nonprofit production company dedicated to the production of social issues films. Her first film, No Word for Rape, was an award-winning documentary film about sexual assault in urban and rural Alaska. Grants from the American Film Institute, the National Endowment for the Humanities, and the Alaska State Art Council allowed Mary to continue to produce films in the following years, broaching such topics as homeless, domestic violence, and breast cancer. Mary's documentaries have been featured in prestigious festivals across the United States and Europe. Welcome, panel, and thank you for being here. I would love to just open up with a couple questions for each of you, and starting with you, Rebekka. And I'd love to ask you, how did Sam's story and how does Sam's story fit in with the kind of storytelling you want to bring to the world and Vision Maker Media wants to bring to the world?
That's a great question. So Vision Maker is all about empowering natives to share their own story to public television, primarily through documentary. We also opened up a shorts program recently to kind of get some more narratives out there too. And so we're hoping to package those. And they're all young filmmakers, younger filmmakers, telling their own story in one way or another, fiction or non. But we've been focused on documentaries, and we've been around for almost 45 years now. And, it's important for people to see authentic stories like this one told from our perspective, because we have to break down those stereotypes. I live in the Midwest, and I get asked all the time. I mean, it's been a while now because I'm typically a speaker on these things and I try to break down those stereotypes ahead of time. But I get asked all the time things like, do you live in a teepee or something like that, So just silly things. And we really need to break through that into mainstream and get our narratives out there. I was talking with a filmmaker about a year ago or so, and she brought up the term narrative sovereignty, which I absolutely love. We're reclaiming our stories. We're reclaiming what it is to be Native and telling our own stories. And we're not leaving it up to other people to say that we're stuck in the past or we're all about casinos or, things, all these stereotypes that we're typically pigeonholed for. And so it's really important for us to empower these people to share their stories and to keep that going for our future generations so that we can have a space in this modern society and feel that our voices are heard. Oh, you're muted.
I was just, that's amazing. I love that term too, narrative sovereignty. That's incredible. Do you feel like the kind of, the access to tools for storytelling now has really helped to open up the ability to bring voices and new voices and unheard voices out where it may have been more prohibitive before, with the cost of filmmaking and just kind of the inaccessibility to it?
Yeah, I would say not only that, but just social media. We've been able to band together so much. Standing Rock is a perfect case for that. There was not a whole lot of national news coverage on that, but you looked on Facebook and you saw people on the front lines getting hit with water cannons and rubber bullets and things like in tear gas. And so social media and these smartphones, that's been the way, and it's making it easier for our youth to tell stories. And I have a 5-year-old stepdaughter, and she says, I'm going to put this on my YouTube channel. She doesn't have one yet, but she loves making videos, and she's obsessed with watching YouTubers. So I'm really curious to see all of these youth and how they tell their own stories, you know, being native and being in this modern technology. It's interesting. And then, you know, add in quarantine and how we're forced to be online more, you know, and we're forced into these spaces more and figuring things out, like how do you screen a film like this? It's amazing. I can be there from the comfort of my own home, you know. I love it. And yeah, social media, smartphones, and it's only going to get better, I think, from here. So
Yeah, it's certainly a challenge, but it's also an incredible liberation too. It's very interesting. It's odd how difficult things can bring that into focus. I'm going to come back to you. Thank you so much, Nara. What drew you to Sam's story, and what was the collaboration process like on a project like this? You don't live exactly next door to each other.
No, I'm going to say at the outset, I'm adjusting to having invisible braces. So I now have a speech impediment that I did not have 3 days ago.
Awesome.
But Mary, no, you're absolutely right. Mary lives in Alaska. I live in New York City. But we met, oh my goodness, Mary, we met 20 years ago, right before Mary moved back to Anchorage from New York. And we worked on our first project in the summer of 2001. And so over the course of basically 2 decades of collaborating, you develop a shorthand, and you're aware of the way the other person works. And sometimes we're like an old married couple, you know. You know, I want to do something one way. Mary always says, don't overshoot, Nara, stop overshooting. It kills us in the edit. But we know each other very well. And, you know, at the end of the day, we can have a cup of tea, whatever, and unwind, and it all works out. I think the appealing thing about, I remember clearly when Mary first spoke to me about working with Sam, he was really going through a very formative process. It wasn't like visiting somebody at the end of their story and recreating their journey. He was really embarking on a fresh journey. He had been tapped to become a mentor and a leader before and leader is a very difficult term for him. He said to me when we were at Standing Rock, he said, I don't want to use that word really. I'm not a leader. I'm, you know, that's not how our culture thinks of these things. But he really was being sort of put in that position, and then he had to grow into it. And so it was fascinating to be along for that ride and see him learn to become a public speaker, and see, you know, him respond to how these boys were looking at him and realizing kind of what role he had to play for them. And so to be allowed to film in a sort of observational way and go on that journey with him and really allow him to, you know, without forcing any constraints upon him, figure out how that worked out was a fascinating thing. Whereas if we had started at the end and he was an established speaker, we would have had to sort of, you know, that story would have been something we'd have to reconstruct in hindsight. So we got to travel with him as his story unfolded.
You know, as a filmmaker as well, a documentary filmmaker in particular, you know, there's got to be some kind of a spark that keeps you going. It's, you know, it's not for the unbridled riches of filmmaking. So, and especially in a formative story like you're talking about, you know, not really understanding where the fixed point is on the horizon all the time with something like this. What is that spark that keeps you going as an artist, Nara?
I think for me, and this is where I have the luxury of not being the producer. You know, for Mary, a lot of the things that would be a source of anxiety for her, she might answer this question very differently. For me, the uncertainty is some of the spark, you know, the excitement of not knowing the ending. And it's very funny when I'm wearing a directing producing hat, that becomes a burden very often. You think, okay, do I have the budget to sustain, you know, to keep things going through all this uncertainty? For example, with my current project, which was interrupted or reshaped profoundly by the pandemic, these things become bigger questions. Whereas if I were, you know, shooting, then it's sort of like, well, that's for her to figure out. But it really, you know, it was fascinating to see Sam's thought pattern shift. And I think, you know, when he decided to go to Standing Rock, that was a big thing because that took him out of Alaska and into this much broader, what had really become a global Indigenous issue with all of these Indigenous voices from all around the world coming together. And that reshaped him too. And so I think it's very exciting to have that privilege of traveling with somebody on such an intimate journey. And so, you know, sometimes if you have a very prescribed sense of how things will end, then you can become complacent. But having to be just adapt with the person to what's happening, it's a very, very human experience. And that I really felt honored to travel along with that.
And vulnerable. Yeah. Thank you so much. It's beautiful to watch your work. Mary, I would, congratulations. It's so wonderful to connect like this. And I, of course, you know, want to dig into your mind and see what fires you is what fires your storytelling as well. And so that's where I wanted to start with you tonight was, what is your core criteria in deciding what kind of a project you undertake and you want to undertake?
Well, first of all, it has to be moving and engaging to keep us in there because, as Nara pointed out, there are many ups and downs and many times where there's no budget at all. And, you know, we're eating, I mean, our company joke is, where's the vat of hummus? Because we ate a lot of hummus on all of our shoots. And it wasn't a real shoot without carrot sticks and hummus. But I actually, as a mother, felt an affinity to Sam as I would to a son in a way, watching him stumble and find his way and blossom and gain self-confidence and resolve some things with his past. And he taught me a lot about what that past really means. So it was a cross-cultural growth thing on the side, besides being a film. And I'm really grateful to all my collaborators, and including Nara, and we've got our board of directors here, Greta and Rebekka, making this financially possible through Vision Maker Media. We have never been able to finish this film without that kind of support. And Brian, the musician, everyone contributed significantly, which is why the pandemic is so hard on filmmakers, because we're used to working in pods and to go out there and try to make a story. I was asked about 3 weeks ago to make a film without ever leaving my house and never encountering anyone. And I had to think about that for 24 hours before I could even come up with some sort of a plan to do that. So it's personal involvement, it's personal caring. There are many times with Sam where it got frustrating, but I believed in his heart, and I believed in what he was demonstrating to the world, which is one person can make a difference. And he, you know, towed the line. He did it, and he modeled that for his daughter, and he listened to his daughter, who came to him and said, I'm feeling something here, and he honored that and helped her fulfill that. And that's universal. That's across all cultures: parent-child understanding and relationship and growth. So thank you again, Rebekka, for everything Vision Maker Media did to make this happen, and for trusting us, for doing it.
Yeah, here. Thank you. We try to be mindful of everybody's evening, so typically try to wind things down around 7. So I want to open it up to folks that got to watch the film tonight, and ask some questions of these wonderful artists yourself. You can go ahead and unmute yourself and just ask a question, or you can type something in the chat bar, or if you know how to do it, you can virtually raise your hand. And don't feel like you're on the spot. I've got plenty more questions, but I definitely want to give you the chance to ask these folks directly. That's part of the joy of being able to connect in this way. So fire away if you have any.
I do.
Amy.
Yeah. First of all, just incredible film. Very, very moving. Tears many times throughout it. Was it hard for Sam to, be in the spotlight? I mean, from the little I know and my exposure with Native cultures in Alaska, it's like you don't do that. So that I'm assuming that had to be pretty difficult for him. How did he deal with that?
I guess I can say that Nara carried the heavy weight on that one because they're closer in age and I think they connected more. And she was able to connect to him on different levels than I could because I was always thinking about the story, the budget, and so forth. And Nara and Sam actually were friends more than, our relationship. So it's definitely not, at least not Alaska Native culture, to put yourself front and center on purpose. It's the opposite of that. So I don't know, Nara, you want to speak to that at all? But he was not seeking attention. I think at times it got to be a little compelling to him just because it fed itself, but I don't think that was his motivation ever, really. Nara?
Yeah, I think it helped that when we were filming this, I was finishing up photography on a feature about the Alutiiq language revitalization movement, and had worked with Mary in a lot of Native villages throughout Alaska. And when we weren't filming, I, would be able to talk to Sam about things that were of common interest and about people whom I knew he was connected to through social media and, things that they had gone through and things, people who had been on sort of parallel trajectories. So we had some reference points where I think we were able to build up a sort of trust that way. Another thing is whenever I'm filming in with a subject who has some unease, I actually don't use, I'll hold the camera in such a way that I can always maintain eye contact as a way of knowing that I have permission. And that's incredibly important to me. So I don't use a tricked out viewfinder. I try to film, it's more awkward in some ways technically, but it allows me to always check in as a human being. And that's something that it's a technique that has served me well in certain instances, and I felt was imperative with Sam. If I could tell if he ever, and I had a peripheral awareness, if anyone he was interacting with did not want the camera on, that was something I was aware of, and I did not need to be told that. And I would always remind him, I said, if I'm missing that cue and you need us to stop, let us know. And that's something that Mary and I will be sensitive to as well. But yeah, there were moments that were tougher.
Take Molly out, please. Sorry. Got it. Well, we don't have 2 minutes, okay? Puppy wants out.
Oh, the puppy. Okay.
Great question. We have a question from Michelle. Not sure if it was asked yet, but how did Mary find Sam, and what was your original interest in him, Mary?
That's a good question because I didn't know about him until a local assembly person called a meeting and said, there's this young man who's really doing some exciting things, and somebody needs to be making a film about him. And everyone says, you're the one to do it. That's only because I've been around the longest. And so we met with him, we talked to him about it and agreed there was definitely a story unfolding. It was at the very beginning where he had just made that first post that his teacher talks about. And so it took a while. It took a year really to gain enough trust, to have the access we needed to get the kind of moments that we have in there.
Anybody else have a question in the immediate? Good.
You know, sorry, I do have one more. Is there, what can we do? Is Forget Me Not still going? Is there anything we can do to help? You know, do they take financial donations? You know, miles. I mean, I saw him using, you know, donated Alaska Airlines miles, you know, to get people back home.
Well, truthfully, it has kind of peaked and wound down. Right now, almost all the homeless people are being sheltered in a giant hockey stadium because of the pandemic. They opened up this arena and they have hundreds of people in this shelter. And so there's not the same kind of thing going on. All the flights are canceled to the villages. They've locked everybody out. The airlines are going bankrupt. So it's a different set of problems now. But miles, I mean, eventually they'll be valuable again.
Well,
I saw Sarah was trying to ask a question. Sarah
yeah,
B.
and I just wanted to interject quickly that it looks like the man of the hour has joined us.
Oh, good. Sam, there you are.
Sam, if you can, let's see.
Can you put your camera on, Sam, so we can see you?
He's saying that he can't hear anything.
Yeah, it's technically a little bit challenging the first time you do all this.
It is. There's a lot going on at the same time. Bear with us, Sam. We'll figure it out here. There are a couple buttons at the bottom left of your tray. If you hover your mouse down, there's a mute and a video button to get the camera going. And then, Tyler, what would a sound not being able to hear issue be? Would that just be the sound on his system?
Probably.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's unfortunately
There it is.
not something.
There,
Oh,
There it is.
so you're Sarah B?
There's Sam.
Hey.
Sam, can you hear us? I think he's still connecting.
So should I go ahead and ask my question?
Absolutely. Fire away.
That was very, very inspiring. Thank you so much to all the filmmakers, and thank you to Sam for the work that you're doing. I think this movie would be so helpful for young people that are struggling with alcoholism and addiction, even if they're not Indigenous. And so I was wondering if you all had strategized about how to make the film available to programs that are working with youth that are struggling with alcoholism and addiction. Beautiful film and beautiful work that you are doing, Sam. Thank you to all.
Rebekka? I think Rebekka's the most poised for that question because they have created a study guide, and I'm not sure what all is happening with the film on that level.
Yeah, it's available to broadcast. Yeah, you can check our website, visionmakermedia.org. It's in the chat bar, and if you go over to films, well, I can just post this link too in the chat bar. But there's a viewer discussion guide available. You can stream the film if you're interested, and you're streaming it yourself as well. You just have to pay a price for that. Yeah, I'll go ahead and post the film page, and then you can see the resources available.
Thank you.
Thanks for your question, Sarah. Sam, are you able to hear us now? Not sure.
last thing, Sam, if you do want to say anything, and if you can.
It looks like he's muted. It looks like he's muted on your end, Mark.
Yep, I just unmuted you, Sam. Can you hear
Sam?
us?
Yeah, can you hear me now?
Yeah.
man.
No.
Hi, Sam. Hey.
Welcome, man. So glad you're here.
Yeah, thank you. Hi.
From Greta.
Hi, everybody. Hi,
Hey,
Greta. How you doing?
really good. It's good to see you.
So,
Yeah.
Sam, you escaped the big intro here, but you're not going to escape the questions. So I wanted to ask you something, and then I wanted to open it up to our folks who have joined us tonight because I'm sure they have questions as well. But first thing I wanted to ask you was, we get hung up on numbers, especially in the social media world we're living in right now. How do numbers stack up in the face of an actual human being when you go and help someone and see the results of the work that you put in to as a community to help another person? I mean, we always kind of miss the fact that there's a human being behind those numbers. And so could you speak to that with the work that you've done?
Well, I don't know. I don't think I think it all comes down to perspective. I don't really see numbers. I don't like to count the people I help, you know, and I don't want them to ever feel any type of connection of obligation, you know, even if it's just like of me thinking of it. And but one thing I can tell you is I learned this from my counselor. I use forget-me-not as a way to ignore the things that were going on in my personal life. So I think sometimes people do that with their own work too, you know? People use their work to not heal and to just like, you know what I mean? They use that to like turn away from what's really going on inside here. And that's one thing that I learned is say my life and my problems was this 60-inch TV playing, right? And then Forget Me Not was like helping people out was like this 42-inch TV that I put in front of mine. And I just completely ignored what was going on in my life, you know? And I just watched what was going on with what people needed. And I think in a way, you know, I use Forget Me Not to just like, you know, I don't know but that's one thing I learned from Forget Me Not is like from like a psychological thing, you know, standpoint. I use it as a way to like, just like, I don't know, just to numb the things that are going on in my life, you know. And I think that's the reason why I'm pointing that out is I think people do that too, you know. People do that and they end up burning out. It's good to like, you know, tend to some of the stuff that you're dealing with rather than using work to ignore them.
I absolutely relate, and as a fellow person in recovery, also understand and relate to using lots of things to fill the hole and to try to find some balance. So that's incredibly insightful, man. And I know I'm going to just be quiet here now because I'm sure other folks want to ask you some questions. So go ahead, you guys, fire away, and you can put it in the chat bar or just unmute yourself. If you got a question for Sam or Rebekka or Nara or Mary, fire away. Or not.
I'll ask Sam. I'll ask you a question. Sam, how are you doing now? And have you?
Okay.
Do you feel like you have a good balance in your life at this point?
Yeah. I realized that Batman is a fictional character, and I can't play Batman, you know. And as when I continue to just keep doing and doing and doing is I didn't realize that I was a broke ass Batman, and and now I just, I don't feel so obligated to like help people out like as much as I do. I'm working on more of just being present when I'm anywhere. That was a hard thing to do. I don't think people understand that. Forget Me Not, the having Forget Me Not as a way as a platform to help people. A lot of people used it as almost like a 911 service, and nobody knew. Like, I mean, of course, people were happy and proud of it, but they didn't really think about the psychological weight that I was carrying. When I'd be like playing with the dolls, like with my daughters, I'd be like just doing fun things with my kids. But at the same time, the other half of my brain would be, wonder where I'm going to get this person's plane ticket. This person's like in a life. I noticed that was one thing that really, that's called secondary trauma. And I allowed that to continue for a long time. But now that I acknowledge it, and now that I see that, I don't allow that anymore. If somebody asks for help, I'll put that in like a time slot, to where I'm like, okay, I'll worry about that right now, but I'm with my daughters, that's their time. And when I'm with my dad, that's his time. And I noticed that it's not only healing for me, but it's healing for my family too, because they get the full me now, So I'm doing a lot better when it comes to that. So.
Well, Sam, you answered one of the other questions I had just now about how to take care of yourself when you're trying to take care of others. I had one more question for you about your time at Standing Rock. What was the most inspiring thing for you in that time? What did you take away from that time with being connected with all those folks there?
Wow. That place was incredible. It's almost it is a sad feeling, because it's something that I know that I'll never experience again. As an Indigenous person, I know some of my history, and I know how bad things got when it came to like losing our culture and losing everything, our hair, our language, our land. And I always wondered what made that, what instilled that resilience? How the hell are we still here? And when I went to Standing Rock, I was really saddened. I was listening into this story. We're in this teepee, and we're listening, me and my cousin Chris were listening to this lady talking. And she was talking about this really sad, she was talking about getting shot by rubber bullets. And it really angered me, because she was an older lady, and you can see tears going down her eyes. She was talking about her experience and what happened. And that was so sad. Like, I don't know. That could have been my auntie. But then, out of nowhere, I don't even remember what she said, but she said something funny. And she just made us all laugh. And that was like powerful. And I saw that. I saw what we have. I saw what kept us going, was that laughter, was that our sense of humor. it kept us going. And man, that was so beautiful and powerful to see that, you know, life will throw you a lot of life will throw you a lot of stuff, but your sense of humor will keep people going. Your sense of humor will keep people going. It'll be that light that people need. And I thought that was really beautiful to see that. And I see that in my own family, my own, you know, just my own family. I see that, you know, even when we have a death or a sad time, the person that shines the most is our goofy one, you know, the goofy one in the family. You know, we just love to be cheered up, and even when we don't expect it. But yeah, that was one thing I'll never forget when I was there.
Thank you, Sam. Michelle wants to know what the filming process was like for you.
Well, I want to be real with you guys. I'm gonna just be blunt and honest. I said it in the film. My mom, I didn't really have my mother around too much when growing up, and it was funny how Mary just came into my life and was just this motherly figure, and I really cherish that. I'll always cherish that. And Mary is an amazing person that puts her heart into what she wants to do. And I'm really glad she had Greta and Nara and you working with them and helping. And I remember when you called me when I was in Fairbanks. That was just days before I met President Obama. I remember when you called me, and I was just thinking, what the heck? Like, I just didn't see it, you know? I don't know. But this filming process was pretty cool. I really enjoyed it. There were a lot of people that I met that I really enjoyed their company. Mike Williams, he deserves his own movie. I really loved going to all those villages with him all those years ago. It was just incredible being able to film our time in Standing Rock, because I just don't know how that happened. And I know sometimes life, like I said, could be hard, but I always got to count my blessings. And documenting this was amazing, because not too many people get to do something like this. And even though I've changed since filming this. Like, if I was asked to film something today, I would say no, absolutely not. I've changed a lot since then. But I do feel like I appreciate my privacy a lot more now. And one thing that I didn't realize was there's a lot of young boys from my village that are really proud of me, that know I have a movie about me. And I didn't even think of that, like that sentence. Yeah, Samuel Johns has a movie about him. And I'm like, dang, that sentence, I never processed it. So that's cool. I'm glad that these kids have something to be happy about and be proud of, you know? So, yeah. Thank you for that question.
Rebekka, I wanted to come back to you here. You know, Sam touched on it here a second ago, and it really, you know, it touches on all of us. But in the face of so much injustice in the world, and you know, and we see it every day, but especially with the Native American story in American history in particular, what is the fire that inspires you to continue to do the work and continue to be the change you want to see and continue to tell the stories that you want to tell? What is that thing? Sam kind of hit on it with, you know, that laughter that kept him going. And you as a producer type and as an executive producer type, what is that thing that really fires you to keep telling the stories you want to tell?
It's just in my DNA, you know, to be a person who works for my people. I've always prayed that way. I've always lived life that way. Even when I was younger, you know, And I grew up on a small reservation in Kansas, and we had a lot of things that we had to deal with that were not fair to, and there's a lot of injustice, and we saw a lot of poverty and things like that. And this was just normal everyday life to me, but it was very, we lived in, I would say, in a more communal way. uh, and then when I went off to college, I realized, wow, a lot of people don't know about us, or there was a total culture shock because I went to a university, a big university in Kansas, and I went to use one of my dorm roommates' hair things, and I didn't think to ask her because we just shared everything, back home. And so she said, "Why are you using my stuff without asking?" And I was just, my mind was blown, and it was weird to me that I couldn't go outside in the mornings and pray like I was doing out on the reservation and stuff. So I don't know, it's always been taught to me that way, or my elders have always said, you have to go get your education and do well for yourself, but you come back and help your people. And it's always been the we, not the I, instilled into me throughout my life. And yeah, it's just in my blood, and when I see these injustices, I'm sort of able to walk in both worlds, being in the media world too, and saying we need to get the word out there about these things. Because if people know that these things are happening to us, like missing and murdered Indigenous women, if people truly understand it and can wrap their head around the jurisdiction issues, and truly try to wrap their head around that, and not just say, oh, people can go, because there's this viral video right now where this girl is doing her makeup or something, and she's talking about missing and murdered Indigenous women happening on reservations, and saying, I don't want to go to a reservation and go missing and murdered. And that's not the case at all. She almost gets it, almost, but there's such a jurisdictional issue that is so hard to comprehend. You really have to break things down to help people to understand, but that's what journalists do, and that's why I've gone into media, just to get these words out and to try to make people understand our life, which is a totally underground life. It's a totally different lifestyle, and in America. And sometimes I just feel like I am living in an underground world, because nobody knows what's happening on Native Facebook pages or Native Facebook feeds. Those things rarely get mentioned in non-Native communities or circles or whatever. People still say firewater around me. They still say powwow around me, things like that. There's so many additional things that are attacking us without people trying to attack us, but it's just the way that the media has treated us for so many years, and through the boarding school process and everything, we've been silenced. And my grandparents, they went to boarding school, and they said, those dirty Indians over there, they were ashamed of who they were. And they said, that's not us, we're not the Indians. And they didn't embrace their culture until way later in life, when they were older. And so a lot of things got lost because of that shame that boarding schools put on us. But it's up to us, and we're the seventh generation. We're the generation that's supposed to focus on healing and breaking those cycles of abuse, and turn around and bring our culture back and help our people, and rise up with each other, pick each other up, and do these things that Sam's doing too. It's amazing work, and it's things that a lot of natives are doing around the world without recognition like this. It's a huge honor that someone decided to do this film. So thank you, Nara and Mary, because we don't get that kind of attention ever. And so it's pretty amazing that we're getting that. And thank you, Sam, for all your work.
Thank you, Rebekka. Thank you for being here tonight too, and for your work. Nara, we're going to wind down here now, and I just love to know, you're kind of in the epicenter of this current crisis we're in America anyway. And as a filmmaker, as a storyteller, when we get embedded with folks and we really care about the stories we're telling, we have to find a way to take care of ourselves as well, to keep going and keep the story going. And so, with the context of this world we're in right now, how does that manifest itself for you? Like, how are you taking care of yourself and you know, in the bigger picture, but also in terms of nurturing your storytelling?
I think a struggle I've always had with the types of projects that I'm drawn to is there are almost always moments where you wonder, is the responsible thing to keep on filming, or do you put the camera down and help? Because sometimes the need to help somebody overrides the need to tell the story. And in this particular instance in New York City, I have not focused on storytelling. I put artistry aside, and I feel that there's been such sort of urgent need, a lot of which predated the pandemic and will go on. It's highlighting certain disparities and systemic injustices that in ways that may be good in terms of making people more conscious. And so I've been doing a lot of volunteer work that has nothing to do with filmmaking at this point, and am realizing that a couple months in, it's time to get back to film work, but it's hard. I think my attention span has been dwarfed by what's happening with illness and poverty in the city right now. And so it's a matter of my figuring out how to kind of reconfigure my thought processes to pursue that creatively. But there are a lot of mutual aid groups that are springing up in neighborhoods in New York that allow for more direct assistance to people who are food insecure or whatever it might be. So long answer to your question, which the short answer could have been, I have not been focusing so much on artistry, but I need to get back.
I have to say, you should really look at her Facebook page, because she has been doing a lot and verbalizing it in such a poetic way that it gives you another inside look at what's happening out there. So go ask her to friend you.
Okay.
Nara, do you have a...
and with a smile, I say, you make a smile on my face,
Yes.
Nara, when I read your posts.
Well, it's driven home how fortunate I am to be going through this process where I do have editing work I can do. I have a roof over my head. I do have food in the refrigerator, yeah. And that's not true for a lot of people. But there are a lot of people who don't have the vocabulary to really talk about trauma, and this is visiting trauma upon a number of people who will live with that and don't have the tools yet to cope with it. So we're at the beginning of that, even as the curve flattens here.
Right.
Yeah.
Thank you, Nara. Thank you for making, it's now 10:30 almost at night. Thank you for coming on tonight. It's great to see you again. And I got one more question for Mary and one more for Sam before we take off here. Mary, you know, you are an Alaskan now, and you weren't always growing up, but how, you know, just like your relationship with Nara, you're a mom and your son is, you know, across the country, and yet you still keep telling Alaskan stories. What is it about Alaska that has invaded you so, you know, mightily to keep telling these Alaskan stories, and what is it about that place?
Okay, thank you for that question. You're right, I've tried to leave 4 times. I've had the good fortune of lots of travel all over the US and outside the US. There's just no end of wonderful stories here. And I've grown to love our indigenous population from day one. My very first film, I was out there in a small plane visiting all these villages. And Molly, stop on the bone. And it reminded me so much of how I grew up. The small towns in the Midwest, the doors unlocked, the hello, everybody was hello, looking after the elders. There was something there that reminded me, that felt home-like. And it's also, of course, geographically very beautiful, but there's so much cultural diversity here, so many different populations with different dance and language and food customs. And so I feel like I'm just never going to run dry.
Yeah, I feel that the same way. I was just telling, I think Tyler and I were talking about it earlier today about the vastness and the fact that you'll never be able to touch it all in a lifetime. Thank you for making this film. Thank you for being such a mensch and a friend and an inspiration to me. And we'll do this again. We'll keep this thing going. And lastly, Sam, for you, I could listen to you read the phone book, man. I seriously, you have a voice. You have a way about you of telling a story just with the way that you live your life, and you've lifted my heart up ever since I very first met you. I think we met in the gym in Dillingham, and you know,
Yeah.
I'd love to know. First of all, I'm absolutely thrilled you are finding some balance with your family and keeping and creating that personal space. But what do we have to look forward to? What is coming down the pike for something that you will be using your voice for in the future?
I don't know. I just mostly want to I still want to help people out. I think I could still work with Forget Me Not in a more quieter way in the future.
Mm-hmm.
But one thing that I really want to try to work more towards is trying to push my entrepreneur and work on some projects that I have in mind that I want to try to do to help some of my people out, through a business way, instead of Forget Me Not has been like a social way of helping, but I want to help more in getting more into the business side of things, and I think that's where I'll probably be more involved in here in the future.
Well, love to keep that conversation going because I think it's brilliant, and you're the right man to do it. And thank you for sharing your story with us. Thank you for being so vulnerable. You've inspired me. You've been a mentor to me. So I appreciate you, and I appreciate every one of you guys for showing up tonight, being here, and being a part of this community. We, as you know, for those that are interested in the wild and the storytelling about Bristol Bay, we have a virtual tour that we're about to embark on. June 5th is going to be our first actual virtual tour screening event date. And we're going to be opening in Anchorage, Juneau, Seattle, and Washington, D.C. on June 5th. So if you don't currently get our newsletter, I just put it up in the chat bar right now. You can copy paste and just enter your information and get our newsletter to stay in touch in real time. And there's so many great stories and so much good work to do out there. You guys are all an inspiration to me. So thank you for showing up tonight. Thank you for what you do. And stay in touch and have a great night. Take care.
Thanks.
Take care, everyone.
Thank you.
Okay.
Nice to see
Bye, y'all.
everyone.
Bye, everyone.
You all.
Thank you, Mark.
Bye, you guys.
Very cool.
Thank you very much.
Great to see you.
Bye.
Welcome.
Nice to meet everyone. Good to see you, Rebekka. Bye-bye.